It started with a glance that lasted too long, and ended with her whispering, "One kiss won't hurt, or maybe it will." I never expected a simple visit to my friend's house to change the way I looked at the world. It was supposed to be just another Saturday afternoon, video games, junk food, the kind of mindless fun you fall into without thinking. But the moment the front door opened, and she stood there, everything I thought I knew about myself shifted a little. My friend's mom. She was nothing like I imagined. I thought she'd be stern, maybe distracted, the way adults often are when they're juggling too much at once. But instead, she greeted me with this warm, unhurried smile that made me feel like I wasn't just another guest, like I belonged there. Her voice was calm, melodic even, as she welcomed me in. And then there was the way she carried herself. Confident, but not in a loud way. Every step was graceful, every movement measured. I couldn't help but notice the quiet elegance in her posture, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she laughed, or how her eyes seemed to linger a second longer than most when she looked at me. I shouldn't have noticed, but I did. The scent of her perfume brushed past me as she walked toward the kitchen, something subtle and floral, the kind of fragrance that makes you want to close your eyes just to hold onto it a little longer. I caught myself stealing glances, at the curve of her shoulders, the way her hands moved so effortlessly as she gathered plates, the soft rhythm of her footsteps across the hardwood floor. And then there was the moment, small, almost forgettable, but not to me. She reached past me to grab a glass from the counter, and her arm brushed against mine. Just a light touch, casual, completely ordinary. But I felt it like a spark, racing under my skin, waking something in me I didn't know had been sleeping. I laughed at myself for even noticing. She's your friend's mom, I thought. Don't be ridiculous. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I couldn't shake the quiet pull I felt in her presence. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something about the way she made the room feel lighter, safer, more alive. Like she was holding the entire house together with nothing more than her kindness. And yet, behind her smile, I caught fleeting shadows, a tiredness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, the kind of weariness that comes from carrying more than you let others see. It made me wonder what she held back, what she kept hidden. That was the first time I realized I was noticing her not just as someone's mother, but as a woman. A woman who laughed, who carried unspoken burdens, who seemed stronger than anyone gave her credit for. And that realization scared me more than I wanted to admit. The second time I visited, I told myself I wouldn't notice her as much. I'd keep my focus on my friend, on the reason I was there. But some things are easier said than done. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, moving with that same quiet grace I remembered. The soft clatter of pans, the faint hiss of something simmering on the stove, it all wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I sat at the counter, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really, I was watching her. There's something about seeing someone in their natural rhythm, doing something simple like cooking, that feels more intimate than it should. Her hands worked effortlessly, slicing vegetables with practiced ease, then pausing to wipe them clean on a towel. The air carried the scent of garlic and herbs, and for a moment, I felt like I'd stumbled into a scene that didn't belong to me, a private little world I was only borrowing. She caught me looking once. Just a glance over her shoulder, a half-smile tugging at her lips, as if she already knew the thoughts I was trying to hide. I looked away quickly, heat creeping into my face, but my heart thudded a little harder for reasons I couldn't quite name. The small touches began to build, though neither of us said anything about them. When she leaned across the counter to hand me a glass of water, her fingers brushed mine for half a second longer than necessary. When she reached past me to grab a jar from the shelf, her arm slid lightly against my shoulder, leaving behind a trail of warmth that stayed long after she moved away. It wasn't deliberate. At least, that's what I told myself. But it was enough to make me restless. And then there was her laughter. My friend cracked a joke from the living room, something stupid that normally would have gone unnoticed. But when she laughed at it, really laughed, the sound spilled through the house, light and unguarded. It wasn't the polite laugh adults give when they're humoring you. It was real, soft at first and then stronger, filling the space with a kind of ease I hadn't realized I craved. I felt myself smiling without even meaning to, just because she was. I stayed longer than I should have that day. I told myself it was just because my friend wanted me to hang out, but deep down, I knew better. It was the way her presence steadied me, the way every small detail about her seemed to sink under my skin, the curve of her smile, the warmth in her voice when she asked if I was hungry, the fleeting touch of her hand when she set a plate in front of me. They were small moments, ordinary moments. But together, they felt like something building, slow and steady, just beneath the surface. And though I didn't say it out loud, I knew, I wasn't lingering for my friend anymore. I was lingering for her. It was late when it happened. The kind of late where the house feels like it's holding its breath. My friend had gone upstairs hours ago, leaving me half asleep on the couch with a blanket tossed over me. I thought the night was finished. But then I heard her footsteps in the hallway, soft against the hardwood, and suddenly I wasn't tired anymore. She appeared in the doorway, her hair loosely falling around her shoulders now, no longer neatly arranged like earlier. She wasn't dressed for guests, just a sweater, simple, comfortable, but there was something disarming about seeing her that way, unguarded, softer somehow. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said quietly, though the truth was I hadn't really been asleep. I sat up, shaking my head. "You didn't? Couldn't sleep?" She gave a small smile, the kind that hides more than it shows, and stepped into the room. The lamp beside the couch cast a warm glow across her face, softening her features, drawing me into the quiet space between us. "I don't sleep well most nights," she admitted, almost like it slipped out before she could stop herself. She hesitated, then sat on the armchair across from me. "When the house is quiet, that's when all the noise inside my head shows up." Her honesty caught me off guard. Most people brush questions aside with easy answers, but she didn't. She let the silence stretch, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed somewhere beyond the floor. I swallowed, searching for words. "I get that," I said finally. "It's kind of the same for me. That's when I start thinking too much. About where I'm going, who I'm supposed to be. Sometimes it feels like I'm just drifting." Her gaze lifted to mine then, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before, not just kindness, but understanding. Like she knew exactly what I meant, because she'd felt it herself. "You're too young to feel that lost," she murmured, though her voice carried no judgment, only empathy. "Maybe," I said, half smiling. "But sometimes I think it doesn't matter how old you are. Some feelings just follow you." She let out a quiet laugh at that, but it wasn't a laugh of dismissal. It was soft, thoughtful. And then she leaned back in her chair, exhaling like she'd been holding something in for too long. "Loneliness," she whispered. "That's what follows me. Even in a house full of people, sometimes I feel it pressing against me." The words lingered in the room, heavier than either of us expected. And for a moment, all I could do was sit there, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the quiet tick of a clock on the wall, and the steady sound of her breathing. I wanted to say something, to ease that weight, but instead I just nodded slowly, meeting her gaze and holding it longer than I should have. It wasn't the kind of silence that needed filling. It was the kind that said more than words ever could. In that moment, sitting across from her in the dim light, I realized I wasn't just drawn to her smile or her touch. I was drawn to her honesty, her vulnerability, the way she let me see the parts of herself she kept hidden from everyone else. And I knew, something between us had shifted. After that late-night conversation, things between us weren't the same. We didn't say anything about it, but something unspoken hung in the air every time we crossed paths. I felt it when she looked at me, and I think she felt it too, though neither of us dared to admit it. One evening, I came by to return a book my friend had lent me. He wasn't home yet, so it was just the two of us. She opened the door, surprised but smiling, and invited me in. The house was quiet, filled with the faint hum of music playing softly from the kitchen. "You can wait inside if you'd like," she said, gesturing toward the table. I nodded, setting the book down, though my heart was already beating faster than it should have. She moved closer, reaching for the book, but paused as her eyes fell on me. "This collar," she murmured, almost to herself. Her fingers reached up, brushing against my shirt. She straightened it gently, smoothing the fabric with slow, careful motions. It should have been nothing, just a kind gesture, but the way her fingertips grazed my neck made my breath catch. For a moment, time slowed. Her touch lingered longer than necessary, warm against my skin, and I felt a shiver ripple through me. I glanced at her, and she was close, closer than she'd ever been before. Her eyes flicked up, meeting mine, and there was something in them I hadn't seen before. A softness. A hesitation. And something else I didn't dare name. I could have stepped back. Maybe I should have. But I didn't. She pulled her hand away at last, her lips curving into a small, almost nervous smile. "There. Better," she whispered, though her voice carried a tremor that told me she'd felt it too. Later, as we sat at the kitchen table, she reached across to thank me for helping her carry in groceries earlier that week. Her hand rested briefly on my arm, light, almost casual, but then it stayed. Her palm pressed gently against me, her thumb brushing once, barely there, like she wasn't ready to let go. I don't think I breathed in that moment. My pulse pounded in my ears, and the warmth of her touch spread through me like fire. When she finally pulled back, I almost missed it, the quiet sigh that left her lips, so faint I might have imagined it. We didn't speak of it. Not then. Instead, we carried on with small talk, pretending nothing had happened, though the silence between our words said everything. I laughed at her stories, she smiled at my jokes, but underneath it all was that lingering awareness, the undeniable truth that something had crossed a line, however small. By the time my friend came home, the air had settled again, calm and ordinary. But inside, I knew better. I knew her touch wasn't something I could forget. And judging by the way her eyes followed me when I left, I wasn't sure she could either. It happened on a night that felt too quiet for its own good. The house was still, the kind of stillness where even the ticking of the clock feels loud. My friend had gone out, leaving me alone with her, and though it wasn't the first time, tonight felt different. We ended up on the couch, side by side. At first, it was innocent enough, a movie playing in the background, the glow of the screen flickering across the room. But slowly, the space between us began to shrink. My shoulder brushed hers once, then again, until finally we stopped pretending to pull away. Her warmth was right there, pressed lightly against me. I could feel the rise and fall of her breathing, steady but a little shallow, as though she was trying not to think too much. I wasn't thinking either. I was just aware, of her, of me, of the way silence wrapped around us like something fragile and charged. She turned her head, and I felt it before I saw it, her eyes on me. I looked back, and suddenly the room felt smaller. Her gaze wasn't playful, not casual. It was searching, almost trembling at the edges, as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff and wondering whether to jump. I couldn't move. I didn't want to. Her lips parted just slightly, like she was about to say something but stopped. The second stretched, thick and unyielding, and I swore I could hear the faint rhythm of her heartbeat if I listened closely enough. My chest tightened, my throat dry, every part of me aching to close that final distance. And then she whispered it. Soft, uncertain, more to herself than to me. "One kiss won't hurt," the words hung there, trembling in the air between us. My breath caught, because for a moment it felt like permission, like the world had tilted just enough to make the impossible possible. But then, just as quickly, her eyes flickered down, and she finished the thought in a broken murmur. "Or maybe it will." Her voice cracked slightly, the weight of her hesitation pulling her back from the edge. She let out a nervous laugh, almost apologetic, and leaned away, just a fraction. The distance returned, but the memory of what almost happened burned hotter than if it had. I didn't push. I couldn't. I just sat there, caught in the gravity of the moment, trying to steady my own breathing. The movie played on, though neither of us was watching anymore. Her hand rested close to mine on the couch, close enough that if I moved just an inch, our fingers would touch. But I didn't. And neither did she. We sat like that, suspended in a space between what we wanted and what we were afraid of. And in that unspoken almost, I realized something. Sometimes the moments we don't cross become the ones we remember most. The storm rolled in just as evening settled. At first, it was only a faint rumble in the distance, but soon the sky broke open, rain tapping against the windows in a steady rhythm, the kind that makes a house feel both smaller and safer. My friend was gone again, out with people I barely knew, and once more it was just the two of us. We sat at the dining table, mugs of tea steaming between us. The air was thick, not from the storm outside, but from the storm neither of us wanted to name. She spoke first. Her voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the sound of rain. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel it," she said, staring down at her mug, her fingers tracing the rim. "When you're near, it's like my heart forgets how to behave." The honesty in her words left me frozen. I wanted to answer, but the weight of her confession held me still. I could see the conflict written across her face, the part of her that longed to step closer, and the part that pulled her back, afraid of what it would mean. "I shouldn't be saying this," she went on, her voice trembling now. "You're my son's friend. I'm supposed to keep this distance. I've told myself 100 reasons why this can't happen, but none of them stop the way I feel when you're in the room." Her words pierced me in a way I didn't expect. She wasn't just admitting attraction, she was admitting vulnerability, risk, fear. And in that, she became more real to me than ever before. I reached across the table, slowly, giving her the chance to pull away. My hand found hers, warm, tense, and when she didn't move, I felt her fingers tremble lightly against mine. "I feel it too," I said softly. "I tried to ignore it, to push it down, but it's there. It's been there since the first time I saw you smile. And I don't know what it means, or where it could lead, but I can't pretend it doesn't exist." Her eyes lifted then, and in them I saw everything, the longing, the fear, the battle she'd been waging with herself. The storm outside cracked with thunder, as if echoing the moment, but inside, the silence between us was louder than anything else. She rose from her chair slowly, almost uncertainly, and stepped toward me. For a second, I thought she might leave the room, but instead she came closer, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her. She leaned down, wrapping her arms around me in a hug that was meant to be gentle but turned desperate. I held her, my arms tightening around her, and in that embrace, everything spilled out without a word. Her head rested against my chest, her breath uneven, her fingers clutching at the back of my shirt as if letting go would undo her. We stayed like that, longer than we should have, holding on to something fragile and dangerous, but also something real. And though neither of us said it aloud, we both knew, there was no going back now. The storm had passed by morning. The air was clearer, washed clean, and sunlight spilled softly through the curtains. I woke up on the couch, not entirely sure when I had fallen asleep, but I remembered the night before in sharp, lingering detail, her arms around me, the sound of her uneven breathing, the weight of everything we hadn't dared to say out loud. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been some half-dream spun from the storm and my own restless thoughts. But then I saw her in the kitchen, moving quietly, pouring coffee into 2 mugs as though it was the most natural thing in the world. She glanced up when she noticed me watching. A small smile curved her lips, soft, tired, but real. She set a mug on the table in front of me and sat across, folding her hands together like she was gathering courage. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence wasn't heavy this time, though. It was gentler, almost protective, as if the house itself was holding the moment steady for us. Finally, she sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I thought I'd regret last night," she admitted quietly. "I thought I'd wake up wishing it hadn't happened. But I don't." Her voice trembled at the edges, but her eyes were steady on mine. "I don't regret it at all." Something loosened in me then, something I hadn't realized I was holding so tightly. I reached across the table, my hand brushing against hers, and this time she didn't hesitate. She turned her palm upward, threading her fingers through mine, and gave the faintest squeeze. "I don't either," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended, but it was the truth. We sat like that for a while, hands entwined, not rushing the moment. The warmth of her skin against mine said more than words could manage. And in her eyes, I saw something shift, not just attraction, not just longing, but a quiet kind of peace. Then she stood, moving around the table toward me. My heart raced as she stopped in front of where I sat. She leaned down, her hand brushing against my cheek, her thumb grazing lightly along my jaw. The touch was tender, deliberate, full of meaning. And then, finally, she kissed me. It wasn't rushed, wasn't reckless. It was slow, unhurried, as if both of us understood this was not about desire alone, but about all the nights of silence, all the glances and unspoken confessions that had built to this single moment. Her lips were warm, soft, steady against mine, and when we finally parted, I could still feel the echo of it deep inside me. She let out a breathless laugh, resting her forehead against mine. "Maybe it did hurt," she whispered, teasing but sincere. "But in the best possible way." I smiled, closing my eyes, holding her hand tighter. The storm outside had passed, but something inside us had only just begun. And in that quiet morning light, for the first time, it didn't feel forbidden. It just felt right.